The back button is probably the most commonly used button by any web surfer, but it can be a pain for us web developers, especially when forms are involved. In this episode, I want to show you a couple tips on how you can redirect the user back to an earlier page very easily throughout your web application. And hopefully this can be used in a way to minimize the user's need to press the back button through well-placed links and redirects. Okay, so what we have here is a basic store application with some products, and we have an Add to Cart button. If you go to the specific product page, we also have an Add to Cart button there. So what happens when we click it? Well, it just goes to the cart and adds that item to the cart. But let's say instead of going to the product's cart page, we want to go back to the product itself, or whatever page the user was last on. So if we go to the product pages and click Add to Cart, we want to be able to redirect back to this page rather than going to that cart page. So here's the controller action which gets triggered whenever we add an item to a cart. Basically, it's just creating a cart item record and then redirecting back to the current cart page. But instead of going to the cart page, we want to go back to the page the user was previously at. And to do so, it's actually very easy. Instead of Rails, you can choose redirect to just back, like that. And that will take the user back to the page they were previously at. Alright, so let's try this. Let's just add an item to our cart, and it took us back to this page just like we wanted. Pretty cool. So this works fine for a little while, but then our requirements change again, and they decide to go back to the cart page again, but provide a link to come back to our previous product page. So on our cart page, for example, they want a link down here that says continue shopping, and it will take them back to the previous product page that they were last on when they added the item to their cart. Well, to accomplish this, it helps to understand how redirect to back works. Really all it's doing is just redirecting back to the HTTP refer. So we can do that request environment HTTP refer, and that's actually basically exactly what it's doing. So we can use this instead of redirecting back now. We can store this inside of a session and use that to link to the back page later on. So we can go to the current cart URL and store our refer in a session. Let's call it last product page, and just store it inside of there. Okay, so now here's what that cart page looks like, and we want to add a link down here at the bottom to take them back to their last product page. So we can see if that session variable is set. If it is, then we'll add a little link here. Just say continue shopping, and just go back to that value which was stored, the refer value. Alright, now let's try this out. Let's add a new item to our cart, and it took us to that cart page. We have a continue shopping link here, and it takes us back to the page we were last at, no matter which page it was. So if we are on the product page here, click Add to Cart, continue shopping, it takes us back to the page we were last at. Pretty cool. Now just a quick disclaimer, this HTTP refer parameter is passed in from the client's web browser, and it's an optional parameter. They don't have to pass it. So it's not something that we should always rely on being there. Most browsers do pass it. So, but it's a good practice to always have it default to something whenever you're using it. So here we could just say if it's not set, we can just have it default to the product's URL, for example, and that way, no matter what, the continue shopping button will always be there and just default to the product's URL if the user doesn't have a previous refer. Well, that's it for this episode. It was just a nice quick tip, but I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next week. This episode is sponsored by Pragmatic Screencasts. There you will find high-quality screencasts on a variety of subjects, including Ruby and Rails. Check them out at pragmatic.tv.